The Ember's crown was the pride of the Draken Imperium, a massive flagship carved from black alloy and powered by a crystal heart that shimmered like a captured star. Dragons ruled here, not the beasts of ancient myths, but tall, scaled beings with wings that folded like molten metal and eyes that glowed with inner fire. They were strong, proud, endlessly certain of their own perfection, and among them worked a single human. Her name was Clara Wren, and she was a waitress. She moved quietly through the grand dining hall, where the dragons of the High Council gathered each night to feast. The air shimmered with heat from open flame pits, and the scent of roasted starlings and spice smoke filled the room. Gold chalices stood on tables shaped like talons, and massive crystal chandeliers swung gently overhead, glowing with captured plasma light. Clara's steps were light and careful. The dragons barely noticed her as she passed, just a human, just a servant. Her job was simple: refill their goblets, clear their plates, and stay invisible. But Clara noticed everything. She noticed the way the flames in the chandelier flickered for half a second when the ship turned. She noticed the low hum in the floor plates that sometimes rose in pitch for no reason. And she noticed tonight that the air felt wrong. The shift was small, barely a tremor, but she felt it in her bones. The gravity field, usually stable, seemed to pulse once, like a heartbeat out of rhythm. The dragons didn't notice. They were too busy laughing, their deep voices echoing through the chamber. As they told war stories of old conquests and victories across the stars, at the head of the table sat Warlord Virenth, the largest of them all. His scales gleamed crimson and gold, his wings folded behind him like a cloak of fire. His voice rolled like thunder as he spoke, his golden eyes bright with command. Another world brought to order. He declared, "The humans of the Rim colonies will learn discipline. Their chaos weakens the galaxy." Laughter rumbled from the other dragons. To them, humanity was a curious little species quick to adapt, easy to break, and often amusing. They had conquered humans easily, bringing them into the Imperium as laborers, engineers, servants. Clara kept her face calm as she poured more fire wine into a dragon's cup. She had learned long ago to listen and not react. She didn't hate the dragons exactly, but she didn't admire them either. Their power was real, yes, but their pride was endless. They thought perfection made them strong. Clara had lived long enough to know that awareness, not perfection, is what truly saved lives. She moved to refill another cup and caught sight of the chandelier again. The light flickered, faint but definite. The hum beneath her feet stuttered once more. Something was off. She glanced toward the walls, where silver runes marked the ship's power veins. A faint shimmer danced across one rune, like static. Clara frowned. She had seen that shimmer once before on a mining transport years ago, just before a containment failure. A tiny misalignment, invisible to sensors at first, had nearly destroyed the ship. The dragons had called it human error. But she remembered the engineer who died trying to fix it, a woman who'd noticed the warning signs too. Late, Clara swallowed hard and stepped back. Steady in her tray, maybe it was nothing. Maybe she was imagining it. The dragon's engineers were the best in the galaxy, or so they claimed. But she couldn't shake the feeling that something under their perfect ship was starting to come undone. At that moment, a smaller dragon, silver, scaled and sharp, it snapped his claws for attention. "Human," he barked. "More wine." Clara nodded, refilling his goblet. "Yes, honored one." He didn't thank her. None of them did. They rarely even looked at her face. To them, humans were soft, fragile, and short-lived. Useful only for the small things dragons didn't want to bother with. Still, as she turned to leave, she caught a glimpse of the reflection in the wine, a faint ripple, like heat distortion running up the far wall of the hall. It was gone a second later, but her heart skipped a beat. She wanted to tell someone, but who would listen? If she spoke to a guard, they'd laugh. If she spoke to an engineer, they'd tell her to stay in her place. And if she spoke to a council dragon, well, she'd be lucky to escape without a burn mark. So she said nothing. Instead, she finished her shift, moving through the hall with calm, careful grace. The dragons toasted and roared, their laughter shaking the floor. But as Clara gathered empty plates, she noticed a faint tremor in the floor again, one that matched the flicker in the chandelier lights. She looked toward the ceiling and whispered softly, "Hold together, old girl." No one heard her. The Ember's crown was a living fortress, massive and proud. But even the strongest walls could hide cracks. And Clara had seen enough ships to know that pride often came before disaster. When the feast ended, the dragons rose, stretching their wings and heading to their chambers. Clara followed the servants to the galley, where the air was cooler and the noise of the council faded away. She stacked plates, washed goblets, kept her thoughts to herself, as the others chatted about gossip who had angered which overseer, who had been reassigned to which ship. Clara slipped away to the back maintenance corridor. She had one small secret, a tiny viewport that looked out at the ship's main core conduit. Most servants didn't know it existed. She'd found it months ago, while cleaning. She peered through it now. Beyond the glass shimmered the heart of the Ember's crown, a blazing crystal, rotating slowly inside a magnetic field. Usually its light was steady and calm. Tonight it pulsed unevenly, the glow dimming for just a moment before brightening again. Her stomach sank. She'd seen this before, 2 years ago, in a damaged power relay on an old human freighter. It meant instability in the containment balance. If left unchecked, it could lead to overheating. Or worse. She stepped back, heart racing. "Something's wrong," she whispered. But who would listen to a human waitress? Clara looked down at her hands, small, calloused, and trembling just slightly. The dragons trusted machines, systems, and sensors. But humans trusted instinct, and every part of her instinct screamed that something dangerous was coming. She made her way back to her quarters, small metal cubicle deep below deck. Lying on her bunk, she stared at the ceiling as the faint hum of the ship filled the air. Most people would have fallen asleep, but Clara couldn't. The flicker wouldn't leave her mind, the chandelier, the hum, the uneven pulse of the core. She could almost feel it. Like the heartbeat of a giant creature struggling to breathe, she whispered into the dark, "If it fails, they'll never see it coming." And she was right, because the dragons believed their ship was flawless. And flawless things, they thought, could never break. The soft hum of the Ember's crown usually soothed her to rest. But tonight, it sounded uneven, like a tired heart struggling to keep rhythm. She lay on her narrow bunk, staring at the dim light strip running along the ceiling of her small cabin. Every few seconds, it flickered. That flicker wasn't random. It pulsed with the same uneven beat she had seen in the ship's power. Cordot, something was definitely wrong. When the morning call echoed through the servant decks, Clara was already up, her uniform pressed, her hair tied back neatly. She joined the others in the galley, carrying trays and preparing for the breakfast of the High Dragon Council. No one else seemed to notice the odd rhythm of the ship's lights or the faint vibration running through the floor. "Did you feel that?" she asked another human servant, a tall man named Hadron. He blinked at her, confused. "Feel what?" "The tremor. Like the ship's breathing wrong." He frowned, then laughed softly. "Clara, you think too much. Just keep your head down. Dragons don't like nervous humans." She nodded, pretending to agree. But inside, her worry grew. Thinking too much was what had saved her life before. She had seen enough ships fall apart because someone ignored small problems until they became disasters. As the morning feast began, Clara returned to the grand hall. The dragons gathered, against 7 of them today, each sitting on a massive throne carved from black stone. The room glowed in soft gold light from floating fire orbs. At the head of the table sat Warlord Virenth. His massive frame relaxed but powerful. He was the kind of leader whose presence filled every room. His scales shone red gold, like molten lava, and his voice carried calm authority. Beside him sat Lady Cirith, his advisor, smaller but sharper in tone. She noticed everything about everyone except, it seemed, the state of her own ship. Clara moved carefully between them, refilling cups and placing plates of roasted meats. The dragons talked about a recent battle near the rim. They spoke of victory, of burning enemy fleets, of conquest. But Clara barely listened. Her mind was on the faint hum below her feet, and then it happened again. The chandelier above flickered. Not once, but twice. A strange hush fell over the hall for half a second, as if the air itself paused. Then the light stabilized. The dragons continued their meal as though nothing had happened. But Clara had seen something else. For a brief instant, a thin line of blue static had raced across the walls near the power veins, the runes that carried energy from the core. It was faint, but real. Her heart started pounding. She had to tell someone when the meal ended. She waited until most dragons had left. Only a few guards remained, and she knew one of them, Captain Ralvek, stern dragon who rarely spoke to humans, but was at least less cruel than most. "Captain," Clara said softly, bowing her head, "may I report something strange I've seen?" Ralvek looked down at her, his golden eyes narrowing. "Strange? Speak quickly, human." She hesitated, choosing her words carefully. "The ship's energy lights, they flicker. I think it's not normal. It could be from the power core. Maybe an alignment issue?" For a second, he just stared at her. Then he gave a low, laugh sound that rumbled deep in his throat. "You think you know our ship better than our engineers?" He said, "Go back to your duties. The Ember's crown does not break." Clara lowered her gaze. "Yes, Captain." He turned and walked away, tail swaying with pride. Clara bit her lip. It was what she had expected. Dragons never believed humans could notice something they couldn't. Still, she couldn't ignore it. That evening, she found herself once again standing near the maintenance corridor, peering through the small viewport at the glowing heart of the ship. The crystal core was rotating faster now. Its color, once steady gold, was flickering between gold and blue. Her breath caught. Blue meant instability. She remembered that from her training years ago on a human freighter. It was the warning color-energy imbalance building in the magnetic field. She stepped back, her hands trembling. No. It's getting worse," she whispered. "If that core overloaded, the whole ship would be lost. Crew, council, everyone." Clara turned and ran down the corridor. She had to find help. Someone had to listen. At the end of the hall, she spotted a dragon technician, a young one named Kelthor, who often worked near the servant decks. He was kinder than most, sometimes chatting with humans while checking power lines. "Kelthor," she called softly. He looked up, surprised. "Clara, you shouldn't be here. What's wrong?" She hesitated. "The power core. It's unstable. The rotation speed is uneven. It's flickering blue just now. I saw it myself." Kelthor frowned, tapping the cum on his wrist. "The monitors show everything normal." "You must be mistaken. Oh, please look again," she urged. "Sensors can miss small alignment changes. Humans can feel vibrations better." "It's not normal," he sighed, clearly torn between duty and disbelief. "I'll check it later, all right. After the council meeting. It's probably nothing." Clara wanted to scream, but she didn't. Instead, she nodded slowly. "Thank you." He walked away. She leaned against the wall, her heart heavy. Everyone kept saying it was nothing, but the tremors were growing stronger. As she returned to her quarters, the lights flickered again, this time longer. She felt the floor vibrate, then settle. Somewhere deep in the ship, a low metallic groan echoed like the sound of something straining under pressure. That night, she dreamed of breaking glass and blue light. When the next day came, the dragons held another council meeting, this time to celebrate a new alliance. The hall was brighter, filled with banners and flame torches. Clara stood near the door, carrying trays of glowing wine. Her eyes went to the ceiling. The chandeliers glowed steady, then flickered again, just once. But this time, the flicker wasn't gold or blue. It was red, a warning color. Clara froze. Her tray trembled in her hands. Red meant field overload. Her heart raced. She looked around. None of the dragons noticed. They laughed, they toasted, they roared in triumph. The hum beneath her feet rose higher, sharper like a scream beneath the metal. She couldn't stay silent anymore. Clara turned toward the nearest cum panel, ready to shout a warning. But before she could reach it, a soft tremor ran through the ship. The chandelier shook. Plates rattled on the tables. The dragons paused, looking up in confusion. Varant's eyes narrowed. What was that? No one answered. The tremor stopped as quickly as it had begun. The silence that followed felt too heavy. Clara stood frozen, her heart pounding. She knew this was only the beginning. Whatever was happening inside the Ember's crown, it was getting worse. And if no one acted soon, the next tremor wouldn't stop. But Clara Wren felt the tension in the air before she even opened her eyes. The hum of the Ember's crown was no longer steady. It vibrated unevenly through the floor, stronger and louder than ever before. Every sound in the ship seemed sharper: the hiss of vents, the echo of footsteps, the faint, distant pulse of the power core. Something was very wrong. She hurried through her morning routine and joined the other servants. None of them noticed the tremors or the flicker of the ceiling lights. To them, it was just another day working under the dragons. But when she entered the great hall, her breath caught. The chandeliers that hung above the council table were glowing a faint blue, not gold. The light shimmered strangely, bending and twisting in uneven waves. That color didn't belong there. She knew it. The power imbalance had spread through the ship's systems. Clara carried her tray with care, serving the dragons their morning meal. Her hands were steady, but her mind raced. The dragons laughed and argued, their deep voices echoing across the hall. At the head of the table sat Warlord Vieranth, his massive form calm but alert. His wings rested against his back, and his eyes, golden and sharp, watched everything. He was a leader who commanded respect. But even he did not notice the quiet signs of danger right under his claws. The hum beneath their feet deepened. Then a sudden jolt ran through the deck. Plates rattled. Cups tipped. The dragons looked up, confused. "What was that?" asked Lady Cirith, her silver scales glinting. "Probably turbulence," said another dragon. "We're crossing a gravity wave field." But Clara knew it wasn't turbulence. She felt the change in pressure in her ears, the unmistakable signature of core. Instability. Then the lights flickered red for the briefest moment. She gasped. That was no ordinary flicker. Red meant one thing: containment breach. "Get down," she shouted. The dragons turned toward her in surprise. None obeyed. Then the ship shuddered violently, throwing plates and wine into the air. A loud alarm began to scream through the corridors. Containment field unstable. Mechanical voice boomed from the ceiling. Core temperature rising. Immediate stabilization required. Chaos exploded in the hall. Dragons roared in confusion, shouting orders. Guards ran toward the exits, and engineers were summoned through comms. But they were too slow. Clara didn't wait for permission. She dropped her tray and ran. She knew where she had to go. The maintenance corridors small. Narrow tunnels that humans use for cleaning and repairs. Dragons couldn't fit inside them easily, but humans could. And one of those tunnels led straight to the core access shaft. "Stop her!" One of the guards shouted, but Vieranth raised a claw. "Let her go," he commanded. "She knows something." Clara didn't hear him. She was already sprinting down the corridor, her shoes clanging against the metal floor. Steam hissed from pipes as the ship's systems struggled to stabilize. The temperature was rising fast. She reached the maintenance hatch, slammed the release, and climbed inside. The passage was cramped and hot. Her uniform stuck to her skin, and every breath burned in her chest as she crawled forward. The walls around her glowed faint blue. The energy conduits were overheating. Sparks jumped across the panels. She flinched but kept moving the deeper she went. The louder the core's hum became, no longer steady but chaotic, like thunder trapped inside a cage. Finally, she reached the viewing platform near the heart of the ship. The crystal core spun wildly inside its containment field, glowing bright blue and white. Energy arcs leaped across the room like lightning. The stabilizer arms were shaking, the magnetic field uneven. Clara's eyes widened. If the core cracked, the energy inside would tear the ship apart. Manual override, she whispered. Come on, please work. She ran to the control console. The screen flickered with warning symbols in Draconic script. She couldn't read all of them, but she understood enough from her old training on human freighters. The problem was clear. One of the 3 stabilizer arms had jammed, throwing the rotation off balance. The field was collapsing in slow motion. Her fingers flew across the panel. She bypassed the automatic locks and opened the manual controls. The room trembled, and a wave of heat blasted over her face. The console's voice growled in Draconic. Unauthorized access. I don't care, she said through clenched teeth. I'm not letting the ship burn. She grabbed a metal lever and pulled it down. The stabilizer arm groaned and shifted slightly. Sparks exploded around her. She coughed, covering her face with her sleeve. The hum of the core deepened, spins slowing slightly, but not enough. A deep voice roared behind her. Human, what are you doing? She turned and saw Warlord Virenth standing at the entrance. His scales glowed with heat and his wings were half open, trying to block the wild energy arcs. He could barely fit through the doorway. Saving your ship, she shouted. He took a step forward, the floor creaking under his weight. You'll die if you stay there. She looked back at the controls. If I don't, we all will. The stabilizer jammed again. She pushed harder, using all her strength. The lever refused to move. Sweat poured down her face. Her arms trembled. Come on, she whispered, just a little more. A sharp snap echoed through the room as the lever gave way, locking into place. The rotation of the core slowed, then steadied. The light shifted from wild blue to calm gold once more. For a second, the world went silent. Then the alarm stopped. Clara fell to her knees, breathing hard. The heat faded slightly, replaced by the soft hum of a balanced core. She looked up. Virenth stood in awe, his golden eyes fixed on her. He took a slow step forward, lowering his massive head. You, he began, his voice low and rough. You did this. Clara wiped her face with her sleeve, still shaking. It was just an alignment fault. I saw the signs. Your sensors didn't. For a moment, he said nothing. The light of the core reflected off his scales. Then, slowly, he bowed his head to her a gesture she had never seen a dragon make to a human. The Ember's crown owes you its life, he said quietly. And so do I. Clara didn't know what to say. Her hands were burned, her uniform torn, and her body shaking, but she managed a weak smile. You're welcome, she whispered. Virenth turned to the comm panel. This is the Warlord. The crisis is over. Stand down all alerts. Then he looked back at her. You saw what none of us did. How? Clara met his gaze. Because I was watching. The dragons of the High Council sat around the long table, their proud faces grim and still. The usual glow of the chandeliers above was dim, casting gold light across polished stone and metal. Every sound, every breath seemed loud in the heavy quiet that followed the near disaster. At the far end of the hall, standing before the council, was Clara Wren. Her uniform was scorched and torn. A faint red mark crossed her cheek where sparks had grazed her. Her hands, wrapped in light bandages, trembled slightly, but her eyes were steady. She had saved the ship. Everyone knew it. The story had spread through the decks like fire through dry wood. The human waitress, servant no one noticed, had seen what the dragons, with all their power and pride, had missed. At the center of the council sat Warlord Virenth. His scales still dulled from the heat of the core chamber. His golden eyes, once fierce and sharp, now looked thoughtful, almost humble. Lady Cirith spoke first. Her voice, usually cold and strong, wavered slightly. We have received full reports from the engineers. The human acted without permission, but her actions prevented a total meltdown. Clara kept her head down. She didn't speak. Another dragon, silver-scaled and older, let out a slow breath. It seems she noticed a pattern the sensors did not detect. That cannot be possible, said a blue-scaled dragon from the other side of the table. Our systems are flawless. No human servant could outthink Draken technology. Virenth turned his gaze toward him. And yet she did. The room fell silent again. Clara felt the weight of their eyes on her. Dragons were enormous, their voices deep enough to shake the air. She was small, barely reaching their waists. But she stood her ground. Virenth leaned forward slightly, his claws tapping the table. Clara ran. When the alarm sounded, you ran straight into danger. Why? Clara hesitated. Because I saw it coming, my lord. The lights, the sound, the air, it was wrong. I tried to warn others, but no one believed me. Lady Sirith's golden eyes narrowed. And how did you know? You are a waitress, not an engineer. Clara's voice was quiet, but clear. I used to work on human ships before the war. We didn't have perfect machines. We had to listen to them, to feel when something was off. A small change in rhythm, a flicker and light, it always means something. Virenth tilted his head. And you trusted that instinct? Yes, Clara said. Machines are like living things. They warn us when they're hurting. You just have to pay attention. The council murmured softly among themselves. Some dragons looked thoughtful. Others looked uncomfortable. Finally, Virenth spoke again. Our sensors did not warn us until the final moment. You, a human, saw what we could not. You risked your life to save this ship. That deserves honor. Clara shook her head. I didn't do it for honor, sir. I did it because it was the right thing to do. A faint smile touched the corner of Virenth's mouth. A simple answer, but not a small one, stood, his massive wings unfolding slightly. The firelight reflected off his scales, sending warm gold light across the room. You all see now, he said, his voice carrying through the hall, that strength is not found only in power or size. It is found in awareness, in humility. We, the Draken, forgot that. And this human reminded us. The other dragons lowered their heads, slightly a rare gesture among their kind. Even Lady Sirith bowed her snout toward Clara. For the first time since she'd come aboard, the dragons truly saw her, not as a servant, not as a lesser being, but as someone who had done what they could not. Virenth stepped closer. Clara Wren, you have saved my life, and the lives of all aboard this vessel. What would you ask as your reward? Clara blinked, surprised. Reward? Yes, he said. You have earned the right to anything you wish, wealth. Position a post in my court. Speak it. Clara thought for a long moment. She remembered the other humans who worked on the ship, silent and overlooked. She thought of their tired eyes and bowed heads. I don't want wealth or rank, she said finally. I just want humans to be trusted more. We notice things. We think differently. Maybe if we worked with the dragons, not just under them, things like this wouldn't happen again. The hall fell silent. Then Virenth nodded slowly. A wise request. He turned to the council. From this day forward, human engineers will serve as observers aboard every ship in the Imperium. They will watch, listen, and advise. The smallest eyes can see what the greatest overlook. The words echoed through the chamber. Clara felt tears sting her eyes, but she quickly blinked them away. Thank you, my lord. Virenth's expression softened. No, Clara Wren, thank you. He looked to the guards. See that she is given proper care and rest, and make sure her name is recorded in the ship's honors. As the dragons rose and the council ended, Clara turned to leave. She passed through the tall doors, her footsteps echoing softly against the stone floor. The servant halls were quieter now. When she walked past, the other humans looked at her differently, some with awe, some with disbelief. Hadron, the tall man who had once told her not to worry, stepped forward. Clara? Is it true? You went into the Corps? She gave a tired smile. Yes, and I hope I never have to do it again. He laughed softly. You're brave. I don't think any of us could have done that. It wasn't bravery, she said. It was just doing what needed to be done. Later, as she returned to her small cabin, she stopped by the viewport. The stars stretched endlessly outside, bright against the black of space. The ship hummed gently beneath her feet, steady again, strong again. She placed her hand against the cool glass and whispered, Good job, old girl. You held together. Behind her, she heard heavy footsteps. Varanth stood at the end of the corridor, his huge form almost filling the space. "I wanted to see you before you rested," he said. "The engineers tell me you repaired the stabilizer manually." "That should have been impossible." Glada smiled faintly. "Maybe the machines just needed someone to ask nicely." The dragon chuckled, a deep rumbling sound. "You have humor as well as courage." "I will remember your name, Clara Wren, and so will every Draken in the Imperium." She bowed her head slightly. "Thank you, Warlord." He studied her for a long moment, then nodded. "Sleep well, human. You've earned it." As he turned and walked away, the floor shook gently under his weight. Clara smiled to herself and looked back out at the stars. The universe felt bigger than ever, but for the first time. She didn't feel small in it. She felt seen, and somewhere deep inside the ship. The Ember's crown hummed with a steady rhythm, as if agreeing with. The massive ship moved smoothly again through the dark sea of stars. Its engines hummed with steady rhythm, and the golden lights burned bright and calm. The fear that once haunted the corridors was gone, replaced by quiet pride and respect. And at the center of that change was Clara Wren, the human waitress who had seen what no dragon had. Her life was not the same anymore. She no longer carried trays or cleaned tables. Instead, she had been given a new duty observer of systems, a special post created by Warlord Varanth himself. It was the first position of its kind in the entire Dracon Imperium. Now humans across the fleets were being trained for similar roles. For the first time in history, dragons and humans were working side by side, not as master and servant, but as partners. Yet even with all the attention and respect she now received, Clara stayed humble. She still preferred simple food, quiet places, and the small window in her cabin where she could watch the stars. She never cared for titles. She only cared that no one else would have to watch a ship die while everyone ignored the warning signs. The day of the council ceremony arrived. The Ember's crown hovered above the shining world of Draven Prime, the capital of the Imperium. From space, the planet looked like a jewel of red and gold, wrapped in clouds of firelight. Thousands of ships formed a great circle around the flagship, their lights sparkling like stars. Inside the grand hall, dragons and humans gathered together. For the first time, humans were not serving food or cleaning floors. They were invited guests. The dragons sat in silence as Warlord Varanth stepped forward. His great wings shimmered under the light, and his deep voice filled the chamber. "Not long ago," he began, "our pride nearly destroyed us. We believed perfection made us strong, but perfection blinds. We looked for great threats from outside, and we ignored the small signs within." He turned his gaze toward Clara, who stood quietly among the crowd, wearing a simple gray uniform with the new symbol of her post, a golden eye surrounded by stars. "One human saw what the rest of us did not," Varanth continued. "She noticed the smallest tremor, the faintest flicker, and from that she saved us all." The hall filled with low murmurs of respect. Even the proudest dragons bowed their heads. Varanth's eyes glowed warmly. "Let this be remembered across every ship, every world. The Draken Imperium stands today because of Clara Wren, a human who proved that courage does not come from power, but from perception." He raised his claw and struck the ground once. The sound echoed through the chamber like thunder. From that moment, the Human Observation Corps was officially formed, an alliance of humans and dragons working together to prevent disasters, explore the unknown, and keep peace among the stars. Clara was offered the highest honors, wealth, property, even a seat among the Draken elite. But when Varanth asked what she wanted, she smiled softly and said, "I just want to keep doing my job, watching, listening, helping when needed." He laughed, a deep and genuine sound. "Then you will do exactly that. You will serve where your heart leads you." Later that night, after the ceremony, Clara stood alone at the observation deck. The hall behind her was filled with laughter and light, but she wanted a moment of quiet. Through the tall glass window, she could see the stars, endless and bright. The ships of the Imperium floated like glowing islands in the dark. Footsteps approached behind her. She turned and saw Warlord Varanth once again. "You always come here after gatherings," he said, his deep voice calm. "It's peaceful," Clara replied. The stars don't care about titles or power. They just shine. He stood beside her, his golden scales reflecting the starlight. You changed much, Clara Wren. Not only for humans, but for us dragons too. She smiled faintly. I didn't change anything. I just paid attention. Virenth looked out at the stars, his eyes thoughtful. Long ago, dragons believed we were born to rule because we were strong. But strength without awareness is weakness. You reminded us of that. He turned toward her. Do you miss your old life on Earth? Clara was silent for a moment. Then she said, Sometimes, but I think maybe this is where I was meant to be, out here among the stars. Watching. Learning. He nodded slowly. Then the stars are lucky to have you. They stood together in silence, watching a comet pass across the black horizon, its light trailing like silver fire. In the months that followed, the change spread far and wide. Human engineers began serving in every major ship of the Imperium. They became known as the eyes of the fleet, trained to spot what machines could not. Incidents dropped. Accidents were prevented. The bond between species grew stronger than ever before. Where once dragons looked down on humans, now they sought their advice. Where once humans worked in fear, now they worked with pride. Whenever someone asked how it all began, the dragons would tell the same story. About the small human waitress who noticed what they missed, about the flicker in the lights, or about the moment she ran into the flames to save them all. They called it the lesson of the waitress. And on every new ship built after that day, a small phrase was engraved near the main control panel, written in both human and draconic language. The smallest eyes see what the greatest overlook. One quiet evening, Clara sat once again in her small cabin aboard the Ember's Crown. She looked out at the stars, her reflection faint in the glass. The ship hummed beneath her feet, steady, strong, alive. A soft knock came at her door. It was Kelthur, the young dragon technician who had once ignored her warning. His silver scales glowed softly in the light. May I come in? He asked. Of course, Clara said, smiling. He stepped inside, holding a small silver badge. The warlord asked me to deliver this. It's a medal of honor, but he said you might prefer to keep it private. Clara took the badge, turning it in her hands. It bore the image of a star surrounded by a dragon's wing. It's beautiful, she said softly. You deserve it, Kelthur said. You changed everything. She looked up at him with a small smile. Maybe I just helped others to look closer. He nodded, his eyes warm. Still, I wanted to thank you for saving us all. When he left, Clara pinned the medal inside a small box near her bunk. Then she sat by the window again, watching the stars move slowly by. Somewhere deep inside the ship, the engines sang their steady, gentle song. Clara closed her eyes and whispered, You're welcome. The stars outside twinkled back, as if answering her. And so, the human waitress, once invisible among dragons, became the quiet guardian of their skies, a living reminder that awareness, courage, and heart could save even the mightiest of empires.